Imagine giving up everything for your children, only for them to leave you on the street. Imagine being forgotten by your own blood, and then saved by a stranger who wasn't who he seemed to be. That's the story I'm about to share with you today, the journey of a grandmother who went from heartbreak to betrayal, from the streets to finding a love she never expected. But before we begin, I want to ask you something. If you feel comfortable, drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your city. I love knowing where my family of listeners comes from. And don't forget to subscribe. Not just for me, but so you don't miss stories that remind us of what really matters in this world. Now, lean in. Because of the twist in this grandmother's life, you'll never see it coming. My name doesn't matter anymore. People just call me Grandma. But behind every grandma, there's a story. A long story. And mine? Mine began with love. I was a young woman once. Yes, these wrinkled hands, this tired face, they belonged to a girl full of dreams. I wasn't born rich. I didn't wear fancy dresses. But I had something better. I had him, my husband. He was a good man, strong and gentle, with eyes that made me feel safe in a world that wasn't always kind. He worked with his hands, building, fixing, carrying. He didn't complain. Every evening he'd come home with calluses on his palms, but he'd still have a smile waiting for me. He'd scoop up the kids, toss them in the air, and fill our little house with laughter. We didn't have much, just 4 walls, a roof that sometimes leaked, and meals that stretched further than they should have. But we had each other, and when you have love, you feel like you have everything. I still remember the smell of his jacket after work, sweat and sawdust. It wasn't perfume, but to me, it was home. We'd sit by the window at night, whispering dreams about what our children might become. A doctor, a pilot, a teacher. Big dreams for small people. But he used to say, dream big, because dreams don't cost a penny. And then, one day, the dream ended. It was an ordinary morning. He kissed me goodbye like always. I was making bread. The children were fighting over crayons. Hours later, they carried him home. His face was pale. His body was heavy in ways I can't describe. A heart attack, they said. Quick, final. I dropped to the floor. My children cried, not really understanding what death meant. But I understood. My protector, my partner, my only shelter from this storm of life, gone. I was 28 years old, with 3 mouths to feed, 2 boys, 1 girl, all looking at me, waiting for answers I didn't have. That night, after everyone left, I sat in the dark. My babies are asleep on the floor beside me. I put my hand on my chest and whispered, God, give me strength. I can't fall. I can't. The next morning, the world didn't wait for my grief. Bills came knocking. Hunger came knocking. And I had no skills, no degree, and no plan. So I went to work. Any work. All work. I cleaned houses. I washed other people's laundry. I scrubbed floors until my knees burned. I took jobs no one else wanted, because when you have 3 children staring at you with hungry eyes, pride doesn't matter. I remember one winter night. My hands were raw from scrubbing, cracked and bleeding. My youngest daughter asked me, Mama, why don't you eat with us? And I told her, mothers don't get hungry, mothers get hope. But the truth, I was starving. Starving in my stomach, starving in my heart. Still, I worked. Day after day, night after night. I told myself, if I suffer today, maybe tomorrow my children won't have to. Years passed. My sons grew taller, and my daughter blossomed. They didn't see the nights I went without food. They didn't see me collapse in the bathroom, holding my ribs from hunger. They saw only that life was getting better. and in my heart. That was enough. That was my victory. But victories built on sacrifice sometimes come with a price. And the price? It would break me in ways I never imagined. You know, after my husband died, people said, "Poor woman, she won't last. She doesn't have any skills, she doesn't have any money, and she doesn't have any hope." And maybe, for a while, they were right. I'd sit on that old wooden chair in our tiny kitchen, my babies asleep in the next room, and I'd cry so quietly so they wouldn't hear. My boys were too little to understand, and my daughter, she was just a baby herself. But I knew one thing: crying wasn't going to feed them. Tears don't put bread on the table, so I told myself, "Girl, you better learn. You better work. Ain't nobody coming to save you." At first, I tried everything. I scrubbed floors in rich folks' houses, hands raw from bleach water. I washed dishes at the diner till midnight, walking home in the cold because I couldn't afford the bus. I learned to sew, patching clothes for neighbors. 10 cents here, a quarter there. Little by little, I made enough to keep the lights on, just barely. But the hardest part? It wasn't the hunger, wasn't the cold. It was the loneliness. At night, when the kids were asleep, I'd look at that empty side of the bed where my husband used to be. I'd remember his voice telling me, "Don't worry, honey, I'll take care of you." And now it was me, talking to myself, saying, "Don't worry, kids. Mama's going to take care of you." I'll never forget the winters. One year, we didn't have enough coal for the stove, so I burned old books, newspapers, and even broken furniture just to keep the kids warm. I'd tell them it was a game. Let's pretend we're camping. Let's tell stories around the fire. But inside, I was breaking. And food. Oh Lord, food was a struggle. I remember boiling one potato in a big pot of water and telling the kids, "Soup's ready." They thought it was soup, but really it was just water, flavored by a potato split 3 ways. I didn't eat. I couldn't. I had to make sure they had enough. But see, here's the thing. Kids, they watch you. They see how you fight. And my kids, they saw Mama working 2, sometimes 3, jobs. They saw Mama walking home in the rain. They saw Mama going without so they could have shoes for school. And maybe, just maybe, that lit a fire in them. My oldest boy. Oh, he had a brain sharp as a knife. Always reading, always asking questions. I pushed him hard. "Boy, you study. You don't waste that mind." He grew up to be a surgeon. My second boy, Lord, that one had wings in his heart. He'd lie on the grass staring at the sky saying, "Mama, one day I'm going to fly." I laughed then, but he did it. He became a pilot, and my baby girl, she had this spark, always talking, always selling little things. She grew into a businesswoman, smarter than any man in a suit. So, in a way, I did it. I gave them a future. I gave them what I never had. But let me tell you the part that cut me deeper than any hunger or cold. When they grew up, they left, I thought. Now my babies are settled. Now they'll take care of Mama. But no. They got busy. They got rich. They got their big houses, their cars, and their fancy friends. And me? One day I found myself out on the street. My own children, the ones I gave my life for, turned their faces away. Do you know what that feels like? To be invisible to the very people you carried, you fed, and you prayed over every night. It feels like dying twice. But here's where my story isn't over. Because even on that road, sleeping under bridges, begging strangers for scraps, I still whispered, "Thank you, Lord. I'm breathing. I'm alive." And then, He came. That man, that stranger, He didn't look rich. He didn't look important. Just a plain man with gentle eyes. He said, "Ma'am, you shouldn't be out here. Come with me." At first I thought, what's the catch? But there was none. He took me to a little house, small, humble. He cooked me food, gave me a bed, and treated me like I mattered. And one day, I found out the truth. He wasn't just some simple man. He was one of the richest businessmen in the country, a tycoon hiding in plain sight. I asked him, why? Why live like this when you could have the world? And he smiled and said, "Because life isn't about money, ma'am. It's about meaning." And that, my friends, is where my story turns. But before I tell you the ending, let me say this. If you've ever felt abandoned, if you've ever given everything and gotten nothing back, if you've ever been left standing in the rain with no one to call, stay. Stay with me, because you're going to want to hear what happened when my children finally came back. You know, life got real quiet in that little house with that man. Not lonely quiet, peaceful quiet. He'd fix breakfast every morning, just eggs and toast, nothing fancy. And we'd sit together by the window. Sometimes we didn't talk at all, and it felt good. Just knowing somebody was there. Somebody who didn't want anything from me but company. I kept waiting for the day he'd show his true colors like so many people do. But it never came. He was steady, gentle, honest. And then one night I heard him. I got up for a glass of water, and I saw the glow of his laptop in the other room. His voice was low but firm, commanding. And on that screen, Lord, there were faces. Famous faces. Powerful men in suits, women running companies, people I'd only ever seen on television. I stood there, frozen. My hands shook so bad the glass nearly slipped out of my fingers. The next morning I asked him, straight out, "Who are you really?" He looked me in the eye and said, "I'm just a man trying to live simply, ma'am. Money doesn't mean a thing if your soul's empty." I walked away from all that because I wanted peace. And I think, maybe God sent me to you. And right then, I cried. I cried the way I hadn't cried in years. Not from pain this time, but from relief. Months passed, maybe a year. I stopped counting. For the first time since my husband died, I felt safe. I felt wanted. And then one day, the past came knocking. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was sweeping the porch when a car pulled up. Not just any car, shiny, black, and expensive. Out stepped my children, my boys in their fine suits, my daughter in her heels, holding her purse like it was worth more than the whole house behind me. They looked at me like they'd seen a ghost. "Mama? Mama, is that you?" And for a moment my heart leapt. My babies, after all this time. I wanted to run, hug them, and kiss their faces like when they were little. But then I remembered. The nights I slept under bridges, the days I begged strangers for food, and how my own flesh and blood drove past me, pretending they didn't see. So, I just stood there, broom in hand, waiting. They started talking fast. "Mama, we're sorry, we didn't know. We should have been there, please forgive us." I listened. Lord knows I did. And inside me 2 voices fought. One said, "Forgive. They're your children. Blood is blood." The other said, "Don't forget. Don't you dare forget the pain they caused." And while my heart wrestled, that man, the one who'd taken me in, stepped out onto the porch. He didn't say a word, just stood beside me solid as a rock. My children looked at him, confused. "Mama, who's he?" I answered plainly. "He's the man who gave me a home when you wouldn't. The man who fed me when you left me hungry. The man who saw me when you chose not to." Oh, the silence after that. You could have heard a pin drop. My daughter started crying. My oldest son put his face in his hands. The younger one just stared at the ground. "Mama, please," they begged. "Come live with us. We'll do better. We promise." And I looked at them, really looked, not as my babies, not as the kids I once carried on my hip, but as grown people who made their choices. And I said, "I forgive you, but I can't go back with you. My home is here now, with him, with the man who showed me love without asking for anything in return. Blood makes you family, but love makes you stay." Their faces fell. Maybe they thought money could buy my forgiveness, or maybe they thought one sorry could erase years of hurt. But life doesn't work like that. I hugged each one, held them tight, let them cry on my shoulder, told them, "I'll always be your mama, and I'll always pray for you. But I won't walk back into a house built on convenience. I choose the place built on care." And when they drove away, tears running down their faces, I felt peace for the first time in a long, long while. Now, sitting here telling y'all this, I want you to hear me clear. Sometimes, the people you give everything to, they'll forget you. They'll leave you. They'll hurt you in ways strangers never could. But that doesn't mean your story is over. Sometimes love comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes family isn't blood. It's choice. And sometimes the life you thought you lost is just making room for a life you never dreamed you'd have. So if you're watching this right now, maybe sitting in your own pain, maybe feeling abandoned or invisible, hear me. You're not done. Your story isn't over. And you're not alone. You know, sometimes late at night, I sit by that same little window with a cup of tea in my hand, and I think back over it all. I see that young girl I used to be, standing in the doorway crying over her husband's coffin, holding 3 little ones with no clue how to survive. I see myself bent over floors, scrubbing till my back gives out, just to keep food in their mouths. And then I see the woman sleeping on sidewalks, rain dripping on her face, wondering how her own children could walk past her. And finally, I see this old lady now, sitting in a small but warm house, with a man who chose to live simply when he could have had the world, and with a heart that, though scarred, still beats with gratitude. People ask me sometimes, "Don't you regret it, Grandma? Don't you wish your life had been easier?" And I tell them, no, not for a second. Because every hardship carved me into who I am. Every tear watered the seeds of strength I didn't know I had. Every betrayal taught me the true meaning of loyalty. See, if life had been easy, maybe my children wouldn't have become who they are, a surgeon, a pilot, and a businesswoman. They're still my babies, even if they failed me. And if life had been easy, maybe I wouldn't have found him. That man who showed me that love isn't loud or flashy. It's steady, it's quiet, it's faithful. Now, do I wish my children had loved me better? Yes. Do I wish they hadn't left me on that road? Of course. But here's the truth I want you to hear. Sometimes God removes people from your life so he can place the right ones in it. And sometimes, what feels like the end is just the start of the chapter you were meant to live. I want you to think about something. How many of you watching right now are running so fast after success, after money, after recognition, that you forget the very person who gave you life? How many of you haven't called your mama in weeks? How many of you take for granted the sacrifices that were made so you could stand where you stand? Let me tell you, nothing you own, no title on your office door, no car in your garage, none of it can hug you when you're broken. None of it can wipe your tears at night. So before you chase the world, stop, call your mama, tell her thank you, tell her you love her. Because one day, you'll look back and realize she was the only treasure you ever had. And for those of you listening, who feel forgotten, who feel abandoned like I did, let me remind you, you are not worthless. You are not invisible. Somebody out there is waiting to love you right. Maybe not the people you gave your all to, but someone who sees your worth. Don't give up before you find them. Now, as I sit here, I don't have riches. I don't have a big house or a fancy car or the approval of everybody, but what I do have is peace. And let me tell you, peace is priceless. If you ever have to choose between wealth and peace, choose peace. Every time. So to you watching, this, from me, just a grandma who's seen it all, I'll leave you with this. Love the people who love you. Forgive the ones who failed you, but don't chain yourself to their mistakes. And above all, never forget your own worth. You know, after that day on the porch, when my children drove away with tears in their eyes, I thought the silence would crush me. But it didn't. It felt different. Softer. Like a chapter had closed, and another one was quietly opening. The man, my companion now, didn't ask me how I felt. He didn't try to fix my pain with words. He just put a cup of tea in front of me, warm steam rising into the cold air, and said, "Drink, ma'am, you'll feel better." And somehow I did. Life settled into a rhythm after that. We woke early. He tended to the little garden behind the house, and I found myself learning how to plant tomatoes, peppers, and even flowers. I had never grown anything in my life. Not food, not plants. My life had been about survival, not growth. But now, I watched tiny seeds push through the soil, reaching for light. And I thought, maybe that's me too. Maybe I'm still reaching for light. The neighbors, at first, whispered. They didn't understand why a wealthy man would live so simply, why he would take in an old woman who had nothing. Some even thought I was using him. Others thought he was using me. But time has a way of silencing gossip, because slowly, the little house became more than a house. It became a refuge. One evening, a boy knocked on the door. His shoes were torn, his face dirty, and his eyes full of hunger, the kind I remembered too well. I gave him bread, and he came back the next day. Then another child came, and another. Soon we had children sitting on our porch, listening to my stories, eating the little food we shared and laughing at silly games. I didn't plan it. But somehow I became grandma, not just to my children, but to the whole street. And that man? He didn't stop it. He encouraged it. Quietly, he started funding meals, clothes, and even books for the kids, not with his name on it, not with speeches or announcements. Just quietly through me. One night, as the kids ran off with full bellies, I asked him, "Why do you do this?" He smiled, that same gentle smile, and said, "Because once, when I was young, someone fed me when I was hungry. I never forgot. Now it's my turn." And right there, I realized something. Maybe God hadn't just saved me through him. Maybe he was using me too, to be a vessel, to pour out the love I had been denied. For the first time in decades, I felt not just alive, but useful. But life never stays still. One evening, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and my knees nearly gave out. It was my eldest son, the surgeon. His hair is grayer now, his eyes tired. Behind him stood my daughter and my second son, all three of them, together. This time, they didn't come in fancy cars or fine clothes. They came carrying grief. Their father-in-law, the man, who had mocked me years ago, saying I wouldn't survive, had passed away. And with that death, something in them seemed to break too. Success, money, big houses. Suddenly it all felt fragile. My daughter grabbed my hands, crying, "Mama, we wasted so many years. Please, let us make it right." I wanted to push them away. I wanted to remind them of the nights I slept on concrete and the days I starved while they feasted. But when I opened my mouth, no anger came out. Only one sentence: "Come inside." And so they did. That night, for the first time in years, my children sat at my table. But the table wasn't filled with silver cutlery or expensive meals. Just eggs, bread, and tea. The same meal that man had given me when I had nothing. They looked at him. This stranger they still didn't fully understand. And my son finally asked, "Sir, why? Why did you take her in when we didn't?" The man looked at them, eyes steady, and said words that silenced the whole room. "Because love is not a transaction. I didn't give her a home expecting something back. I gave her a home because that's what every mother deserves." Tears streamed down my children's faces. For the first time, they truly saw me. Not just as their mother, not just as the woman who cooked and cleaned and sacrificed, but as a human being who had worth, even when they forgot it. And then something happened. I never thought I'd see. My youngest son stood up, walked over to that man, and bowed his head. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being the son we failed to be."
And then saved by a stranger
and my heart
who
broke
wasn't
all over
who he
again.
seemed to be.
But this time, not from pain, from healing. Weeks passed, and my children kept visiting. Not every day, not perfectly, but they tried, and that effort was worth more than any diamonds they could have given me. One afternoon, sitting with the man on the porch, I told him, "I feel like my story is complete now." He chuckled softly and said, "Stories never really end, ma'am. They just pass into the hands of the next generation." And he was right. Because today, as I share this story with you, whether you're listening on your phone in a busy city or late at night in a quiet village, I want you to know this isn't just my story. It's yours too. Every sacrifice you make, every tear you hide, every act of love that goes unseen, one day it will echo. Maybe not the way you expect. Maybe not from the people you expect. But love never dies. It always comes back. So if you're watching this right now, wondering if your pain is worth it, let me say this. It is. Because love given, even when wasted, becomes seed. And seeds, eventually they bloom. I'm just a grandmother with wrinkles and scars, but I know this much. Money fades. Houses crumble. Success is forgotten. But kindness? Kindness outlives us all. So love while you can. Forgive when you must. And never forget the people who see your worth when no one else does. Those are your true family. And if you still have a mother alive, don't wait. Call her, hug her, thank her. Because when the world turns its back, it's her prayers that will still be carrying you.